Alright everyone, it's time for the Occult video number 384. Everything is both individual and unified. Let's give a little bit of an example here using something that I'm fond of. It is a sphere of iron pyrite that I got some time ago. Actually at a sort of a hippie store actually here in Enschede. It's, up in the central area. Nice store, lots of great incense, including lots of locally made hand incense and soap and shit like that, so it smells really good in there. And they've got some of the good stuff like that normally you don't get in a hippie like incense store. The things like gum benzoin, gum resin and shit like that sometimes can be a little bit harder to find, at least at the standard New England Wiccan shop or something. I wanted to give this as an example because it's a perfect example. This is a sphere of iron pyrite. It is an individual object. It is also comprised of trillions and trillions of atoms. Each atom in turn is an individual object. It's comprised of subatomic particles, which are individual objects that are comprised of quarks, that are individual objects comprised of, I can't remember the term for what quarks are comprised of, and I guarantee you that if you could test that minutely, you would find that those subatomic particles are comprised of other particles as well. I have a feeling that this pattern is replicated for a very long time, possibly infinity. Likewise, is it truly an individual object? No. Well, it is. It's a sphere of iron pyrite. What was it once part of before it was polished? It was part of a larger chunk of iron pyrite. Well, that pyrite deposit, in turn, that single crystal is part of a collection, a network of crystals in that geological formation. That formation is part of a larger formation. That formation is part of the geology of the entire planet. That planet is part of the solar system. The solar system is part of the galaxy. The galaxy is part of the universe. The universe, in my opinion, is either limitless and the construct becomes too large to fathom, or it's one of a number of universes, so vast collections of galaxies far remote from one another. Again, as above, so below now, isn't it? I think it stretches on infinitely in both directions. This is a very occult concept. It actually goes along with multiple spiritual systems. The concept of the interpenetration of a deity, so the deity is all present, so intertwined with literally everything. You could say that everything-ness is effectively the same thing, that they're basically synonymous. The concept of if you look at authentic Eastern tradition with regards to enlightenment and things like that, what do we have? For instance, in Hinduism, a lot of people think it's polytheistic because they have all these various gods, but they're gods in the Eastern sense. It's not like saying, Jehovah or something. It's not a Western concept. The avatars are all part of that same cosmic whole. The inbreathing and outbreathing of Brahma. At some point, everything collapses in on itself, then explodes back out into its radiance and wonderfulness. That is, every individual component of you is an individual thing. You comprise an individual already collectivized from those smaller individuals. Likewise, you are part of a larger individual. It doesn't have to be specifically sentient, but it's part of a whole. When you die, your atoms just get recycled. The dead material goes back into another living thing at some point, potentially. Being capable of being alive, that material has a tendency to filter into mold and mushrooms, and insects will eat your flesh. This ties in with the concept of a SHIB that I've been thinking about recently. Every day I try to meditate upon it. It's the concept of meditating on mortality and decomposition to deaden one's sense of fear of death. It's considered a wise practice by certain Eastern groups prior to death because, of course, you may be vaguely aware of the decomposition process early on. So you should probably imagine yourself going cold. By the way, that will feel like a burning heat because of the differential between your body temperature and the outside world. Could lend itself to NDEs thousands of years ago and the concept of hell, although that's a concept that Judeo-Christians have great trouble in actually understanding because there are 5 or 6 different traditions they're smushing together, not all of which are actually from Judaism or Christianity. Some are from pagan Greece, actually, and other fields. Very interesting. So when you think about yourself as an individual, but also as part of that whole. Likewise, the compositions that make you up are themselves individual. You have cells, and you have different organs made of cells, and then tissues and so forth. They're comprised of smaller individuals. And the old law, as above so below, definitely applies here. When we extrapolate in either direction, we go down to the insanely minute to the point where we can barely test for it, like a quark. There's no way to actually see one. You can comprehend it. You can test for it with very, very sophisticated equipment. It's at some point, I'm assuming that we hit some sort of limit on our capability of delving into the minutiae of objects. Likewise, they go up to the unfathomably large. We can't see the actual end of the universe. I posit that what we see is the edge of the known universe is literally just the limitation of our equipment to filter out background noise. At some point, there's enough matter and energy in the way of what you're testing for that it just becomes a wall of existence, and you can't really go further because the equipment's not sophisticated enough. Nonetheless, it's unfathomably vast. By the way, think of how many quarks must be in the visible universe. It would take you a while to put all of those numbers onto a screen. In fact, the amount of numbers required probably would be impossible for a human to ever write in a single lifetime. Yeah, so there's a little bit of a foray into things. Again, this is an individual object, but it was once part of another. Like if I take a chunk of my flesh out, that becomes a chunk of flesh. It's an individual object, but it also was once part of me. By the way, it could be put back in its place with stitches. Also an occult topic. We'll talk about that some other time. That's about all. Peace out.